Hello, I'm Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it's both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaway, all that way your journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, there's a wonderful song called What a Life, and I got turned on to it thanks to the movie Another Round. And truly, what a life it really is. This past week has been a kaleidoscope, and that's quickly becoming a favorite word of mine, of just activity and things of that nature. And lots of reflection as well as progress on projects. So I'll talk about all of that. But before I fully dive into things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, number one, a lot of birthdays last week. Birthdays seem to be quite a theme. First and foremost, it was my mom's birthday. So I didn't get a chance to spend it with her. She's actually over in Slovakia for my cousin's wedding, so she's over there. But either way, she lives in Seattle, so we wouldn't have gotten a chance to spend it together. But still, it's in that sense, it's great that she's with family and being able to celebrate there. So that's exciting. And then what I didn't know was Napoleon Taval, who is a lead actor in my first movie called Love Market. He actually shares the same birthday as my mom, which is quite something, right? How serendipitous. Another one of my friends had a birthday Friday, and then I also filmed, or recorded rather, this big episode for a show that I work on for someone for their birthday, like a milestone birthday, and I can't share those things yet, but it being a milestone birthday, there was a lot of reflection, and it was a very special episode, and it seemed emblematic of the rest of the week, which was, as I said, all about progress and reflecting and things of that nature. And so it was a very fun episode, and it'll come out soon enough, and I'll announce it when it does. But just made me really kind of think a lot about it. And taking a quick step back, it was interesting. Speaking of Napoleon, we were set to film a little scene with him and Veronica, who's in my now second movie called A Bogota Trip. And, this is for a fun short film project that I'm working on. And this happened to be on the day of my mom's birthday. And since he shares the same birthday as my mom, obviously he was there. And it was just so fun to be able to work with him and have the two of them work together. And it being his birthday, it just felt really special that this is what he chose to do on his birthday. And it's reminiscent of me in that way. Oftentimes, like, for my birthday, I really just want to do what I love. And most of the time, that's just be creative and work on stuff, right? So there was that aspect of it. And as I said, this was Napoleon and Veronica's first time meeting. He had seen her when we premiered at Marina Del Rey Film Festival. So he saw her act. Unfortunately, I've kind of talked about this in the past, but with Love Market, my first movie, because of the pandemic, we never got a chance to screen it in a theater with people, right? So we never had that opportunity. And it sucks in the sense that, I wanted that special moment for the cast and crew that worked so hard to make this movie, right? And it's a shame that we never got that. And still to this day, it's not like a regret, but I feel bad about it. And obviously I can't control it, and no one's upset with me over that. But nonetheless, it's just, I wish we could get that. But anyway, still, it was just fun to bring, someone who I worked with in movie number one with someone who I worked with in movie number 2. And now as I'm like thinking about it, I knew Napoleon, but I never worked with him in that sort of way. Like I knew him more as just a friend, right? And so it was fun to work with him on my first movie. And then Veronica was introduced to me because I was looking for someone to fill a spot on my second film. And, through Crystal McLaughlin, she recommended her, and then we became friends. So it was fun I'll call them the newbies, right? The newbies of my creative life, for them to be able to interact and work together. It was a fun moment. And that's what makes what I do special for me, is the ability to bring people who I think are talented together to meet and collaborate, and just kind of ultimately for me witnessing the spark that comes from it. So it was a real blast, and part of why I say that it was a very reflective week was I worked on an episode where the guest was Rabbi Steve Leder, and this was for Pretty Smart, an episode of Pretty Smart, which is a podcast that I help with. And Steve, it's interesting, like with the podcast that I work on, there's a crossover of guests. And so I'd worked with Steve Leder before on a different show called Pulling the Thread, and very smart person. And what I love is that each episode, even though the guest ends up being the same for, sometimes, each episode is vastly different. And you get something new just because of the dynamic of the host and the guest, as well as like the questions that the host asks and so forth. And, this Rabbi Steve, right now, he's been doing a lot of reflecting upon death and kind of teaching us how to, he's much more eloquent than I, but like in a sense, like die gracefully, or think about death so that way we can die gracefully, because we all will die. But I think part of it is we extract it to think everybody dies, but we don't consider our mortality. And, a big part of that episode, there's so many parts, but I think a core thing that Danielle actually posted about today, a couple of excerpts from it, is this idea that you have to work backwards, right? So like when you think about the legacy, when you think about your eulogy, you're writing that right here, right now. It is the takeaway. And so, thinking about what do you want your final sort of legacy to be, and then working backwards from that. And that's why for me, thinking about Napoleon working on his birthday, being creative, and like, it being sort of something that I do, like, yeah, for me, yes, I want to leave behind a body of work for sure. But to me, it's just the aspect of getting to create and connect with the people that I work with, right? And, by extension, put out something worthwhile into the world. And in a day and age where we've deduced content down to just like, okay, consume, the stuff that I want to create, yeah, I'll argue, I try to have a little bit meaning, I try to subvert and add something rather than just like, okay, here's just another thing to consume and pass time with, right? But even if that, as pretentious as that may seem, even if that's not the case, just the ability to collaborate and enjoy time with people that I love and respect, yeah, it's something that I want as part of my legacy, right? And so that was sort of fun to think about in that way. Now, if I haven't made it clear, I strongly encourage you to check out, this episode. And by the way, anything that I talk about really draws from a wealth of all these incredible thinkers, from books, from movies, documentaries, music, poetry, social media, podcasts, all this stuff, right? And so it is my sincere hope that I'm just a vehicle to introduce you to these brilliant people, and you kind of go and are able to deep dive the thinking that is there. Another brilliant mind that was prominent in my thinking and kind of what was happening last week was Dr. Gabor Mate, and very famous psychologist, if you will, just studying trauma and addiction, and just has a very thoughtful and empathetic way of approaching those topics. And now one of the nice parts is he's really building upon what, to me, Alice Miller in her The Body Never Lies book really starts. And what I mean by that is, we think of trauma and disease as separate of us, but the fact that you can feel stress, right? It's we can think of it as an emotion, but it's also a physical thing, right? And trauma in that way is a physical thing. You must release it, otherwise, it becomes disease as a process, and this trauma within your body processes itself in your body in a negative way and becomes the disease, right? And it's interesting enough because I was talking about this with my friend Jackie Borowski, and she was talking to me about the series The Nick, which is about this doctor, I believe in the 1920s. And she was telling me how watching that show, looking back on it, how antiquated our medicine seemed back in the 20s. And I sort of joked that I was like, well, in some sense, I consider our overall methods of science, and more specifically the medical field, very antiquated in that way, because rather than when someone comes in to a doctor's visit, we never ask them how they're feeling. And we should, because that offers a window into what's going on with them. I call myself a 360 creative coach because I believe as an artist, you need to see the world. You need to observe the world. And not only that, a big component is, as if you want to succeed as an artist, you need the skill set, yes, but you also need the mental fortitude to be able to succeed. So it's a combination of those two things, rather than just the single, tactic. But that sort of philosophy extends for me into everything, right? And I see a lot of the interconnectivity of the world, and think we should try to, it'll be very difficult to understand it fully in that way, but to know that it exists. And you could call it determinism, I don't know, but yeah, I think things are far more connected than we give it credit for. And certainly the pandemic has really reinforced that for me, where it becomes like a butterfly effect of, supply chain. That's a term many of us, certainly not I, had heard before. And now, it's just become part of our vernacular. And it's oh, well, what's up with the supply chain? Well, this country, they're not doing so well because of COVID, and then that reflects, and therefore we can't get toilet paper or something like that, right? It's all interconnected. But I digress. The point being that when it comes, his big thing now was to prove through scientific evidence that disease is a process. And that's why I'm a big advocate, as I said, of of a 360 approach to being a creative, because if you don't maintain your health both physically and mentally, and if you want to lump spiritually into it, I would put that as part of the mental, but different strokes for different folks. It is important to make sure you are healthy, and that's why I try to introduce these ideas. That's why I even talked about Rabbi Steve Leder, because to me it's all one and the same. It all matters. And it's all things, ultimately, that you can then draw upon in your art. So, damn, I just threw a lot at you, didn't I? So, process that as you will. As far as the creative side, like in terms of the actual output, a lot of things dealt with writing last week. So, I've been back in writing and slowly progressing in that way and getting into the routine of it all now that, one project comes to an end and I can, fully dive in. And so simultaneously, I'm working on my second novel as well as this new idea for a movie. And so, in the mornings I've been, I'll write for, I'll try to hit like 1,000 words with the novel, and then I'll, work on the movie. And, overall really good progress. And the fun part too, I was making good progress, and then there's a ghostwriter that I'm working on for a nonfiction book. And this is basically chronicling how I made my first movie, Love Market, to extract lessons to be able to, for aspiring filmmakers. And so, that kind of, towards the end of the week, spiraled where now all of a sudden that overtook my time. Which sounds interesting because, it's like I have a ghostwriter, so why is it taking up my time and from this other writing? Well, here's the fun part. This is why I love collaborating with people, because it brings out new things. And so what I'd done a while ago was I dictated, just like this, each chapter, and then I had it transcribed. And so now with this ghostwriter, he went through all the chapters. He saw Love Market, and now he's kind of finessing of, okay, what's this book going to be like? And the fun part is he's really identifying, okay, the notion that what the thesis of this book essentially is that you can make high value art or high production quality art in terms of movies, but for cheap. And it doesn't have to just be one location, right? All these other, teachings as far as low budget production goes always say, limited to one location, and, just do that, right? And it's like, why? Why is that? I mean, it works. I'm not saying it doesn't, but why is that the only path? And with 2 movies that I've done, I've proven that doesn't have to be the path. I remember speaking with somebody about my second movie, a Bogota trip, and they were like, oh, how many locations did you film in? I was like, I don't have the number off the top of my head exactly, but let's just say probably maybe around 90. I'm like, what? 90 I was like, yeah, I mean, we basically went all over Bogota and, all that to make this movie. And not to mention the interiors and so forth, right? Like I didn't want it to just be this isolated movie. I wanted it to feel expansive. And yeah, I mean, people aren't used to that number. And so, I said, yeah, part of it was like a lot of it is also done through montage and stuff like that. But all the more reason, I mean, you're going to a location just to get like a 2 to 3 second shot at most, for a little sequence. So it's possible to have something have a lot of production value, but made for cheap. And that's what the book aims to do. But that was something that, the ghostwriter was able to draw out of me by reading what I had wrote and kind of seeing stuff that I failed to see, right? He gave me a new perspective. And the fun part also is, and the reason why it started to kind of take up more time in this week was because there's a set of questions that he has that in order for him to progress, I need to answer. And that was fun for me, right? It was like a series of, let's say, 10 or so questions, and just kind of, at first, it was like, okay, let me just answer as quickly as possible so I can get back to him. And then it quickly spiraled into, like, I'm writing paragraph upon paragraph and expanding all this. And so that way, he has a sense of my inner thoughts and feelings about, making that initial movie and so forth. And he can bring that to life through his words in this book even further, based off of what I had already written, and just, it was also fascinating to see what he picked out from this, because I had done this like a year and a half ago at this point, maybe 2, and just kind of it was on the back burner. But now finally I'm like, okay, let's go make this nonfiction book. And just some of the stuff that's in there, like, it's all very rough, but there's a diamond in the rough there. And I talked about, like, making a movie is really like a course in miracles, where you just have to, if you have a good energy about it and become solution oriented and surround yourself with the right people, you can make miracles. And in many ways, anyone who knows and has created something meaningful, I imagine, think about any of your work. It's many times a miracle just to pull it off. Forget the quality, just to pull it off, right? And so that's what this book in part aims to be, just both inspiration, the specifics and all that, just to give an overwhelming wealth of information, right? So that's the hope. So I'm excited to also be working now. The thing of it is too, a lot of this is going to be front loaded for me. So once I answer all these questions, then it becomes a much easier process where, he's able to, ghostwriter, go off and write, and, then every now and then, check in with me. I revise the chapters and so forth. So it'll be a process, but, like with anything, you got to sort of front load it and put in, like for me, I'm big on putting in the work up front to make sure everyone's on the same page, because it'll quicken the runway to completion and it'll make the product that much better. So there was that. And then also another big journey as far as writing that came to a close was the update on my first nonfiction book, Master Mental Fortitude. So, I'd come up with this book in 2019, in October of 2019. But after the pandemic, I really kind of looked at the book and I was like, okay, I still believe in everything that's here, but I think we can update it. I think we can add more value. I even substituted some chapters for newer ideas that I had that I think benefit more. And so I really, took the time to finesse it and really went through everything, revised each chapter, clarified stuff, and so forth. And along with, the editor of that book, Ann Bulk, we've been working essentially for, I think, at least a year at this point, to really update things, even include more graphics, revise. Like it's an exercise book, right? So each chapter presents a lesson, how it applies to you, and then gives you an exercise to apply that lesson to your life. So it's an exercise book. And, we spent a lot of time just finessing the hell out of it and making sure that, it was as good as it could be. And I'm pleased to say it is now out and available. So the link is in the description. And I think, it's 35 lessons that I think will really benefit you. Certainly they've benefited me in all that I do. And the friends that have read the lessons, they benefit from it. These are all based on lessons that I put out as podcasts. So I know they work in that sense because the people that have heard those lessons gravitate towards them and praise them. So it's been really wonderful. But yeah, I'm excited that is crossed off. The checklist. It is done. It is out in the world. Very pleased with it, and mostly less about like just having it off the plate, but knowing that now that it is out in the world, it can be of use to people. Right? That's why I wrote it. That's why I updated it. Right? And spent such a long time doing so, was to bring that value. The other thing that, as far as writing was part of last week was, I talked with John Comerford, who's a writing collaborator of mine. And I was like, listen, Emerson College is doing this pitch fest. They do it every year. And, I've had a chance to observe a few of them, and they're, a lot of great people pitch. But I was like, what if, I know it potentially takes some time away from what I'm working on, but I also think it could be beneficial. What if I took the movie that I'm writing right now and made a pitch for it? And the way that works is it's a 90-second pitch, and you present it to a panel of judges and audience members, and then they vote. But to me, it really was just the exercise of, okay, how do I convey this idea in 90 seconds? And it's a movie that, I know I'm going to make, and most of the stuff that I do so far has been self-financed, and I don't really, haven't yet pitched in terms of like a studio and so forth. But at the same time, I know there's going to be a crowdfund component to it. And, I have written grants and so forth. So I was like, okay, this will be good practice to just do that, because I can, recycle this for future use and altering it a little bit. And one of the things through this, just 90 seconds, you would think is quite a lot of time. But to convey everything that you really need to convey within a pitch, it's not a lot. You need to be clear, right? You don't want to confuse people. You need to hook them, right? You need to make it exciting. But you also don't have a lot of time to do that. So you need to make it like very quick and get to it right away. So you don't have time to over-explain. But you also need to be, you don't want to just like have a log line. You want to give them enough details as far as, who the characters are, the setting, the tone, is it a movie? Is it a limited series? Is it, what kind of genre is it? All these things you need to convey. And that's both through, being direct, but also word choice and all that stuff, right? It's a lot of masters to serve in a short amount of time. And you don't really fully realize it until you actually start writing and doing it. Now, you'd be like me, like for me, the first step was, all right, let me just start with a blank page and write what I think works. Okay, cool. I know it's short, so we'll do it. Because I looked up, I was like, 90 seconds, how many, what does that amount to in terms of words? And it was like around 230. I'm like, okay, that's not a lot of words at all. But I started, and then I had like literally a page, right? And then I tied myself reading it in a way that was natural, right? Where it had not pauses, but it didn't go too fast. It wasn't like, this movie is about, cowboys in the West, and, they kill the bad guys, and then they do this, and then they do that, blah, 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 right? I wanted, you obviously, when you present, you want to have a connection with people and emphasize certain things and speed up at other times and so forth, right? It needs to be like just how we speak. And it ended up being 2 minutes. I was like, okay. So that means I have to cut 30 seconds. Now, again, the simple thing could be, okay, cut a couple of things and then just speed up how I talk. But it's not going to work. Not for me. Because, as I said, part of what you want is clarity. So if all of a sudden I'm talking really fast, then the audience isn't able to follow along. You don't want that. So, I wrote a first draft for the 2 minutes. I was like, okay, let me, sleep on it. Came back to it, revised a couple of things, and, it's the pitch fest won't be for like at least a month, and so it gives me plenty of time. But yeah, just working on it. I definitely don't want to just procrastinate and all of a sudden, a day before, just write something and wing it. I want to have these words, and I'm sure I'll be tinkering with it right up until the final moment. But part of it is I don't want to have cue cards, and this isn't like one of those where there's a prompter. No, it needs to be recited essentially from heart. And then the other thing, when you do a pitch, right, there's always going to be follow-up questions, and so you need to be ready for those. Now, do you know what they will be? You can kind of anticipate the general ones, sure. But, there's going to be something that catches you off guard, and so knowing your story inside and out and being able to convey that is another component of it, right? So it's not just about the actual 90-second pitch, it's about the follow-up to it as well. So a lot of writing last week in various forms, right? The script, the novel, the nonfiction revisions to Master Mental Fortitude, which is an exercise book, outlining, for lack of a better term, the film book, and now writing a pitch. And so, also, like in general, right, writing is a big component of what we do. Even if you're not a writer, if you don't even consider yourself a writer, even if you don't consider yourself creative, like writing is always going to be a part of what you do. Just even like from a business standpoint, certainly for like people who are hiring, they'll look at emails and they'll assess like, how's this person writing? If they communicate with you via text, how are they texting? Because these will all be future forms of communication should you be hired, and they want to make sure that they understand the person, and so forth, right? So writing is a big part, and it seeps into various things, like if you're applying for a grant, even if you're a painter, okay, how you gonna talk about your work, all that stuff, very important. So on Thursday night, and this is shifting gears, on Thursday night I had a chance to see my friend Chris Rosinski's movie, Northern Shade. Now, this is a person that went to high school with me. I think he was 1 grade above me, maybe 2. I think just 1. And, he took a video production class, and we never, worked together, but, through our teacher, we got to know each other and so forth, and he was going to Emerson College, and then he kind of became, my vehicle for learning more about Emerson and being inspired to go there. So this is someone that, we go way back in terms of knowing each other, and, we haven't really seen each other since kind of college, really. And it's not like, again, we weren't ever that close, just because we ran in different circles. I think we always had a respect for each other, but just we're on two separate paths. And so this is his debut feature. I remember getting an email about it a while ago when they were raising finishing funds, and I was like, yeah, of course, I'll donate. And to see the culmination of, knowing him from high school to now seeing his movie at a film festival, and the movie that it was a great movie, really, really well done, and it was shot in Connecticut, where we grew up. So just very proud of him, right? And there's not really much beyond that there, but again, just kind of, if nothing else, just seeing the awe of life, being inspired by the things around you. As I talked about Rabbi Steve Letter, the idea of, what values do you want to be remembered for at the end of your life, and then essentially working backwards through there. And the idea that I was there to support my friends, I want that to be a legacy that I leave behind. And I do it genuinely. And so it was awesome to see, this work of art. And I'm very proud of him, and it was very well received. It's not their first time screening it, but yeah, it was my first time watching it. That was great. So yeah, that's that. Something that I want to talk about as far as film festivals go. So this is primarily geared towards filmmakers. But something that was always kind of interesting for me to learn, especially this time around, was the looseness around world premiere. I was talking with a friend of mine who's done a lot of movies, and he was like, listen, if a film festival calls you, the word exclusive is a legal term. The word premiere, I know that's two words, but I mean, hyphenated, it's one. We'll go with that. The word world premiere is a marketing term. So exclusivity is a legal term, world premiere is a marketing term. And, he was talking with me, and he was like, listen, the festivals that you've been a part of, they were local, right? They certainly weren't marketed to the rest of the world. The world didn't come out and, specifically come for this. It's not like Cannes, where people gather from all over the world and, see your movie in that way. It was a local screening. And I was like, okay, yeah. And it's been interesting to sort of learn that, because, I have observed other filmmakers have what essentially would be like multiple world premieres. I'm like, what? And part of it is, there was a side of me of okay, people are just straight up lying and so forth. And it's like, that's just the way it is. And also, yeah, I mean, it's just more of a marketing term. And the other, until it fully gets called a world premiere by you, it's not really a world premiere. So it's just wildly fascinating in that way, to learn and also, kind of reflect upon, because I think for me, after we played the Marina Del Rey Film Festival, I don't know, maybe I was just too honest with a couple of film festivals, and I look back on it and I'm like, oh, maybe we didn't get in because we didn't have a world premiere status. And if we did, would that have changed things? And there's no real way to know. But now with, we still have, the bulk of the festivals that we still are, that we still have submitted to, we're still awaiting a response. I've maintained that, yeah, okay, we still have a world premiere status, and hopefully it works. We'll see. But also part of my strategy now has also been to really get to know filmmakers and films that I've played in the past and kind of be like, oh, I think, based on your history, I think this movie would play excellent because it fits these criteria that you seem to historically look for. And also, X, Y, and Z filmmaker friend played at that festival. They had a great time. They recommended you and so forth. So just adding personalization to the whole process as opposed to just being, another number in the pile. So that's big for me. So yeah, I think, that's really sort of kind of what I've been thinking about. The other sort of thing that popped into my mind last week as I reflected, as I said, like it's been a kaleidoscope of just thoughts and things, was what would be my next career move, right? Because I'm very happy with what I'm doing, but it was, I think people ask just, hey, do you want to, would you make movies full time and stuff like that? And if the opportunity arose, yeah, sure, I would. But even beyond that, until there's a feasible lifestyle for me, in the sense that it makes me money and I can support myself with it full time, I was like, you know what? I think if anything, when I'm ready, the next thing would be teaching filmmaking at like a, college or wherever. Because I love teaching, right? I mean, that's why I'm doing this, because I love sharing knowledge and having it be a benefit to people. And yeah, I think that would be awesome, right? So yeah, I don't know, I just kind of thought about that, and that seems to fit. Not that I'm actively like pursuing that, but maybe in the next 5 years, like that'll be the thing. So we'll see. As far as this upcoming week, we're filming the bulk of this short film that I'm working on. A major component of it. We're going to film that Friday, so very much looking forward to that. Also, this week I've told myself I'm going to round out and finish off all the deliverables for a Bogota trip and get those over to the distributor and finally get that off my plate, so then I can go to full-time on writing these new projects. So having a Bogota trip off my plate, having a Master Mental Fortitude off my plate, I can focus on all these other exciting new projects. So very much looking forward to that. And by the way, as I round this episode out, I do want to mention that there is still time until October 2nd to watch a Bogota trip as part of the Liftoff Global Film Festival. So the link for that is tinyurl.com/Bogota trip movie. That'll take you to a checkout page. The checkout page is for the film festival itself. It's $12 to view all the movies that they have. So you fill it out, you give your credit card, you'll get an email with a link to a Vimeo page. It has all the films there. We're number 17 on that list. You can click us, watch us. You can check out the other films as well. Ones that are of interest. There's some really good ones. That just even from the description, they caught my eye. I was like, oh, let me check this out, right? So I would encourage you to do that. And also there's a voting component, right? So not only is this an opportunity to see a Bogota trip, it's also an opportunity for you to be able to vote on it so that way it can win an award, which would be nice, right? So, when you go to tinyurl.com/Bogota trip movie, fill out the checkout page, you'll get that email. It'll have all that information of how to watch, how to vote. But remember, it's a limited time only till October 2nd. So, if you want to see this, this is your opportunity. Anywhere in the world, you can see this right here, right now. So go to it. But that's what I have for you. Thank you so much. As always, I truly appreciate you. You are welcome to ask any questions or comments that you have write them down below or hit me up on social media at Phil Svitek. And if you appreciate what I do and think you might benefit from direct interaction, well, there's my coaching, right? So that's linked to in the description, and we can work that way. Or if you just kind of want to dip your toe in first, see what it's all about, that's what my Patreon page is for, patreon.com/Phil Svitek. There's various tiers of support with various rewards, so check that out. And as I made mention, I've put out many projects into the universe, books, movies, merchandise, so that is also linked to down in the description. Supporting that stuff helps support this, because by it being self-sustaining, I get to create more of it, learn, and share those lessons freely here with you. And also, I hope you just, the sheer aspect of it, just enjoy in and of itself, right? So anyway, I have yapped your ear off. Thank you, and I have to see you next time.